So we are talking to Judith Vanistendael this time. Welcome.
Hello.
Very nice to talk to you in Brussels.
Yes.
Comic and cartoon capital.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. A lot of comic artists here.
Thanks for your time. Are you? Do you feel like you're member of a certain comic scene in Brussels?
I am not. But this is it's not because there are no comic scenes, because there are so many comic scenes, but it's because I'm how to say, I shared a studio with a few comic artists, but then I left because I have children and I have very little time to be in the comic scene. So I also have to admit that I started making comics a bit later than most people. So I didn't start when I was 19. I started when I already had children. So I never had the time to make comics and go to the bar afterwards with the people. So I just make comics. But there are a lot of very, very interesting groups, very active studios, very active networks in Brussels. It's very, very interesting. Yeah.
How come you're such a late bloomer in comics?
I think it's genetics. My father was 40 when he became a writer. So I think it's, well, of course, there is a very specific story behind it. I went to Berlin when I was 18 years old. I wanted to be an artist. And I went to the Hochschule der Künste in West Berlin. But there, you were expected to make very conceptual installation stuff. And as you know, I make comics. So I already then I was drawing little drawings with cats and human beings and things happening. And it was a kind of a mismatch. And it was a very, how to say, it was not a very good experience for me because I thought I wouldn't be able to be an artist making what I made. So I quit the school. I went back to Belgium. I studied art history. I specialized in ethnic art. And it was only when I was 27 that I started to realize that actually, yes, I'm an artist. But in a specific way. I'm a storytelling, drawing artist, and this is perfect for comics. So my partner then said, go to school there. We live next to the comics art school of Brussels, so he sent me there.
Which is the school that you are currently teaching at as well?
Yes. There is actually 2 comic schools in Brussels. Well, it's part of Arts University, so it's not a specific comic school. It's just part of art education after secondary school. You have a Dutch-speaking one and a French-speaking one, and I teach in the French-speaking one.
I see.
Called Lucas School of Arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So were you kind of ahead of your time back then in Berlin? Because nowadays every art school does comics, right?
It was non-existent in Germany. It was considered ridiculous and not art. It was 1991. So it just, there was nothing. It was really the decade when art was conceptual. It was highly postmodernism, conceptual art, installations, video art, everything we call it figurative, anything with recognizable human beings was just wrong. So when you look at the contemporary art scene in Belgium right now, you have a lot of interesting painters that make very, very figurative paintings in Germany also. And so, but at that time that was not done. You just didn't do that. So I was not ahead of my time. I was just not with my time. I've never been a very trendy person, but I've never been a very ahead of my time avant-garde person. It's just this is the way I make art and tell things in art. And at that time, that was not something you did.
I see.
It was the Hochschule für Künste in Berlin. It was so conceptual. It was amazing, and I couldn't do anything with that.
So it was highly abstract.
Very.
Mhm. Thank God that has changed, and we are now able to read your comics. Let's talk about your comics. This is your latest. This is the German edition.
Yeah.
Les deux, vies de Pénélopé, Penelope's Two Lives.
Yeah.
And it tells the story of a woman who is torn between her life in Belgium, her family life, and her life as a doctor in Syria.
Yes.
And in the back of your book, you have included a little comic report on Moria, on Lesbos.
Yes.
Which is may I say, an autobiographical report?
Yes.
And was this the point that made you write this book in the end?
No.
Because
No.
it's one thing is Syria, the other thing is Lesbos.
No, I went to Lesbos because I was invited by another artist, comic artist, Aimé de Jong from Holland, to go there. And I was already working on my book, Penelopé, but I accepted to go there because my husband is there. I'm sorry. He will enter.
Welcome to the program.
So I went there because I thought it is the closest I would come to war zone doctors working. I wasn't ready to go to Syria.
So you included it.
One moment.
Oh, of course. Go ahead.
Het is een interview dat ik vergeten was. En je mag er doorlopen als je dat ziet zitten. Ja. Oké. Nee, ze vinden dat heel grappig dat ik dat in de keuken doe, maar ik was het gewoon vergeten.
Ik vind het helemaal goed. Dit is alleen maar aanvullend materiaal voor het preview filmpje.
So that's why I went there. But then going there, I didn't know what to tell because there is so many things already written and told about this Moria camp. And so the only thing I thought what I could do that would be relevant would be to enter the camp, which is forbidden, and go there and look with my eyes and scan everything I saw with my eyes and my brain and then get it out when I was home. That's the only thing that when you have when your profession is making stories with images drawn, then this is really what you can do there, because you cannot enter with a camera. So this is where drawing for me becomes a very powerful tool.
I see. And
you can show things nobody nobody
Hi.
can. This is my husband Frank.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry.
He's in the interview.
Maakt niet uit. Ik ben Markus vanuit Duitsland. Hallo.
Hallo.
En Markus spreekt Nederlands.
Ja, zeer goed.
Goed, hè?
Ja.
Het is een interview voor een klein alternatief stripfestival in september.
Over
Pénélopé. Ja.
Ja, oké.
Ja.
Oké, ja, sorry dat ik stoor, maar doe maar alsof ik er niet ben.
Ja, maakt niet uit.
Okay, so that's why I accepted it, and that's why I did it on this personal level, because I thought that was the only relevant thing I could do.
So you included this in part into your research for the Penelope book.
Yeah.
You're already writing. It's nearly impossible to get into the camp. And then you're leaving out how you did it. I don't know if you can give it
I'm not
away.
allowed.
I see.
I'm not allowed because the people who helped me, they would get very, very big fines and they would be thrown out of the camp, which has burned down now, but I cannot, I got help.
I see. So you actually made your way into the camp and documented what you saw
Yeah.
by drawing.
And it was a very important experience because it made me realize that it is nearly impossible to translate in whatever medium the experience of being in such a place. So I realized that it would be impossible for me to imagine how Syria would be.
Mm-hmm. I see.
The real life experience is so all compassing, all everything. It's smell, it's noise, it's sound, it's visuals, it's warmth, people coming too close, and it's very difficult to translate it. So that's why I decided. That's one of the reasons why I decided not to show Penelope working a lot in Syria, because it's just I cannot know. I cannot know how it is there.
I see. Now, there is one parallel. You're dedicating this Moria story to your daughter, I think.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is a parallel as well, because your
So
daughter, your daughter looks a lot like Penelope's daughter.
She is Penelope's daughter. There is no change made. The name was changed.
So is she the only sort of real person?
Yeah.
Or how much of yourself is inside of Penelope?
I invented Penelope because she needed to be someone very specific to be able to do what she does. And I wouldn't do what she does. So I invented her completely. But of course, she starts from the idea that I am a mother and I have a profession, and it's always a difficult balance between family and profession.
As we can see. By the way, are you working and drawing at home? Because you mentioned a studio earlier.
I had a studio, but I left it in when COVID started, because the children were at home homeschooling, and I decided to work from home. But I don't have a lot of place at home, so I'm looking for a studio right now.
I see. But for now, you're working from home, I guess.
Yes, in my living room, which is not a very good idea.
Yeah, maybe it's going to be over soon.
Yeah.
How did you get the idea about the idea of Penelope in the first place? Do you remember?
It's a very old idea I have, to write about this tension between family and profession. Because when my two children were born, I was still studying and I was working at the same time, and I had two kids being born. They were born when I was studying in art school, and I worked. So it was a very difficult combination. And there were many moments when I thought, okay, I just don't want to have any kids anymore. It's just too much. I don't want them. Let them come back when they're 5 years later, when I finish my studies and when I have time for them. But of course, you cannot do that. It's not like a radio that you can switch off. And the second idea was that I wanted to work with a European classic story, and I started reading Don Quixote. I started reading Shakespeare, right? But then I ended up reading the Odyssey by Homeros, and that was the moment I thought, okay, here this touches upon my first idea about a woman being torn between work and family, because in the Odyssey, the woman is only family. It's her only role, and she cannot decide anything herself. So, which was quite shocking to read. It's a very, for women, it's not such a very nice book, actually. It's a very beautiful story. It's incredible. But so there, those two ideas touched each other, and that's where I started.
And then you turned the Odyssey around of sorts,
Yes.
because Penelope
Yeah.
is not the one who's waiting,
No.
but her husband is.
Yeah, he's waiting nicely and educating the daughter.
It's a very nice twist, actually, to turn that
It's
thing
not a
around.
difficult twist, no? It's an easy one. It's
Is it
nice
also
about it's nice about when you're an author, you can give characters another life.
is it also a feminist twist in your mind?
No, of course not. My husband is saying, why feminist? No. Of course it is, yes. I mean, what else?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that this is how it should be and it's just normal, or you could say that
I'm not
this is
saying
not where we
anything
are
about
yet.
Yeah, I'm just showing. This book is really, for me, it's a question towards the reader. What would you do? What is your reaction? What do you think about what Penelope does? So it's not this is one of normally you make a book and then it's not a you make it and it's finished. But with this book, I'm always interested in what the reader thinks because it's really a question. I give you a case. This happens. What do you think? What would you do?
Mm-hmm. How did the women in your surroundings react to that? Did you get any reactions?
Oh yes, the women were mostly more severe upon Penelope than the men.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Did you have to
Some were
engage
really
in?
angry with her. Yeah. And then most of the men said, "Yeah, of course. Yeah. Why not? Actually." But yeah, that was interesting for me too. I thought, so that maybe it shows that the part of when you call it patriarchy is also kept by women.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to
We are
engage in severe discussions with your female friends about this?
It's not severe discussions. It's just that they tell me that they cannot accept that she does it
Mm-hmm.
in the end. And then I say, yeah, well, she did it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not no, not discussions, but emotional reactions because they know. I mean, they know we live in a liberal democracy that by law you're allowed to do this. I mean, there is nothing you can, and it's more. I think they're intelligent enough to know that it tells more about their own position and their own fears of what they would be able to do than about should this be possible or not. So it touches, I think, some very hidden emotions in women. That's what the feeling I get.
Mm-hmm.
That they're afraid to talk about even. Maybe it's a little bit taboo.
I see. Still.
Oh yes, of course.
A German newspaper is Taz, die Tageszeitung, is writing about this, and they're saying that you are not really naming these problems and these issues. Maybe what they mean is you don't tell it, you don't name it, you show it.
Yeah, but that's what
Is that your intention?
Yeah, but that's what a story does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any story that says that tells the subtext. That's the idea of good storytelling. Now that you show things and that you're completely into the story without the author having to tell you this is about a woman doing this and this and this and having to choose between her profession and her family. No, that would be really boring. No.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't thematize it. No.
Mm-hmm. I see.
But
They're sorry.
But that's also because I'm presenting a case study. This is really how can I? It's like when you teach a theory and then you show a practical example. I'm not teaching the theory. I mean, I'm just showing the practical example. This is how it could be. This could happen. Students, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start a discussion.
I see. And you are doing so by, I would say, rather painting than drawing, in beautiful aquarels. For example, this is the scene where Penelope's daughter is having her first menstruation cycle. It's very, I would say, tense, maybe. It's very, yeah, it's not even, it's no words, basically. How did you decide to use this aquarelle style?
That's because with the book before, it's a very technical question actually, because I made a book before this one. It's called SALTO. It's also published in German, and it was with the color pencil, and it was 400 pages in color pencil, and I destroyed my muscles.
Oh,
And so I had so much pain that I was looking for a very light, fast way of working. And so I took watercolor with very little lines, even because it hurt too much.
I see.
It's a really stupid reason, maybe, but that's the reason behind it. But then, of course, then it starts becoming interesting, because then you have a very limited technical possibilities. So you have to find your way in how to use these limitations, and then and then I came up with this really very, it's nearly sketching. It's some people hate it. They say the story is really good, but then the drawings are just not finished.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it take you longer, this style of drawing and painting?
No, much shorter.
Shorter.
Yeah, it's done in no time. If you do this, I mean, what do you see? It's a bit of blue, it's a bit of pink, it's a bit of red, and then you let it dry, and then you put a little bit lines, and it's finished. It's nothing, but of course you have to master it. So I wouldn't have been able to do this 10 years ago because I couldn't draw. I just couldn't draw well enough. And now for me, it's very, it goes very fast, actually. It's a very economic way of working.
I see. Now, one thing that works very well for me as a reader is an element that you're introducing. It's a child who the protagonist sort of carries with her from Syria in her, let's say, emotional baggage, maybe.
Yeah.
And you're showing this as a sort of, real baggage. I thought that this is sort of an element of, I don't know, like magic realism or something like that. Was that your intention here?
Actually, the ghost comes from the story of a very good friend of mine who is doctor. She's a pediatrician, and she works in the university hospital in Ghent, and she works in the department of desperate cases where they don't know the illness. The treatment is very severe. It's and so she. There's a lot of children dying there. In Belgium, there is euthanasia. I know that in Germany, this is a very, very, very difficult topic, but in Belgium, adults can ask for it, but also children, when they're terminally ill, can talk about it.
This is new, right?
Yes. And so she's one of the rare doctors who does this. And she told me one day, we drink coffee every week and then she talks a lot because she has to get it out of her system. So I'm a bit the big ear where she puts everything in and then she's relieved of it. And she told me one day that very often she has this ghost with her when she goes to bed, or that the children never leave her, of course, because it's so intense. And I thought it was such a powerful thing. And so I decided to use this system of the transformation of pain and death into a ghost for someone who you cannot get it out of your system. You cannot shake it off. So there is always this child with you. And that's what I did. And it was very, of course, it's extremely helpful visually and storytelling wise, because you get an extra level of storytelling. But that's in magic realism. It's the same. It's a very, very powerful thing to do and to use. It's a very powerful narrative technique, because you get higher complexity in your story.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have to take care that I don't use it every time. Because it's so nice to do. It's such an interesting way of storytelling.
Absolutely. So maybe if you allow, I would like to compare it to another work of yours. Maybe by saying a woman's got to do what a woman's got to do meets a man's got to do what a man's got to do. I enjoyed Mikel very much as well. It's about someone, how can I say, someone who's working as a bodyguard in the Basque country.
Yes.
It's a very different style. It's maybe as you just described, your previous drawing style. Is that what it is?
I'm not very concerned with style in general. So every book there is another style coming out. I think it's always my style. I mean, it's the way I draw. And in different stories need different intensities or different visuals. So I just adapt the visuals to the story. And so, but here the scriptwriter, because it's not a story I wrote myself, maybe that is what you feel also in the storytelling. He asked me to do it in colored pencil because of the intensity of color pencil. Color pencil is a very intense way of drawing, and it's very physical. And he wanted this this intensity in the drawings. So that's why I did it. I really enjoy the drawing with color pencil, because the colors are so intense and you can paint with it and draw with it at the same time. So I just loved it, but it's so much work. It's
So this is
work intensive, labor intensive.
so this is the original is SALTO, right? It's the one
Yes.
you just talked about where
This is Mikel in German. Yeah.
Where you damaged your neck.
Yeah. 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 Because you have to push really hard on color pencils to get out the pigmentations. That's why a lot of color pencil drawings are very light and soft. But I like them to be very strong. So, but then you have to push like crazy, and it's just terrible.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that? I mean, there is probably aquarelle as well. If in scenes,
there is, yeah, sometimes, but the red here, it's color pencil. It's no aquarelle.
I see.
The black is ink.
I see. Okay. I like how you have these emotional or real explosions on spread pages, but then in the end, it's probably more of it's more drawing, and Pénélopé is more painting. Would you say?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's because I really am interested in painting without lines, which is very difficult for me. So that's why in Penelopes I try to do as little. I'm interested. You have two ways of making and constructing an image. You can do it with lines. That's the drawing, and then you can do it with flächen. I don't know how you say.
Yeah. Um,
without lines. Like this, without lines. You just have the forms.
yeah.
That's more painting. And I'm very fascinated by painting because it's not my first way of making an image. So I want to master it. I think it's I think it's always interesting to know different systems of making images. So that's what I'm researching in Penelopé too. Yeah.
I see. Maybe let's show an example. Like my favorite scene from Mikel is probably the one where he's talking to his wife, because in this book as well, obviously his decisions have an immediate impact on his family life.
Yeah.
And this is
yeah.
probably shown best in this scene where he's acting behind it's not a curtain, I think it's
No, it's
bed linen.
bed linen. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's very beautiful, I think.
Thank you.
In its this is almost like a movie, I
It makes
think.
it's like Una giornata particolare. You know this movie?
No, actually, I've heard of it.
Well, there is a
but I
scene
haven't watched
where
it.
there is a scene where the main character, the woman, what's her? It's a very famous Italian actress. I forgot her name, and she is hanging the line, and there is the same kind of scene.
I see. So this is directly drawn from that.
I think so. It's not something that I do consciously, but afterwards I see it and I think, and I like the movie a lot. So I think that's what happens there. And there I'm trying to play around with not drawing into the typical comic frames.
Yeah, which you are doing in all the other chapters, I think.
Yeah.
But this is more freely then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drawn more freely.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my next book is also like this. The book that I'm working on right now. It's without any frame.
I see. For Salto or Mikel, you worked with an author.
Yes.
Was this your first collaboration of this kind?
Yes.
How did it work?
For children's book, I work together sometimes with a writer, but for comics, it was the first time. It was double. It was very inspiring because when you work with someone else who writes a story, it's a very different story than you would write yourself or you would make yourself. So it's very refreshing. It makes you draw in a different way. It makes you think in a different way. So I really enjoy it, but it was a difficult collaboration because Marco, he has been a bodyguard, and when we worked on the story, he still was very paranoia. So it was he disappeared from time to time, and he wanted to tell absolutely everything. It's a story of what he experienced as a bodyguard in Basque country. He became a bodyguard in Basque country because he wanted to write a story. So it's his story of a writer destroying his complete private life because he wants to find a subject that's interesting enough to write about. And then so it's fascinating how he did this because he really is very honest about his own decisions, and it's painfully honest actually. But what happened is that he experienced so many intense things, he wanted to tell them all, and so he forgot. Oh, sorry.
Oh, your
he
image?
forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he forgot to tell the story. And it's very difficult to tell someone, okay, this part of your life is not interesting for this story. We're not going to tell this part of your life. And he had made a script for, I don't know, 600, 700 pages or something. And I just didn't want to do that.
You ended up having something like 350?
A lot. A lot. Yeah, a lot.
So it's really the story of his life.
Yes, yes, yes. It's the story. Well, of course, there is some scenes are altered, but it's the story of his decision. It's it's what he did. So yeah, he's a bit intense. So the collaboration was a little bit too intense.
I can imagine. Are you still gonna collaborate
With him? No.
with him or with other people?
Yeah, I just made a book with Zidrou.
Oh yeah, let's talk
book.
about this.
This is a book with Zidrou.
Mhm.
He's a more commercial scriptwriter. He's very famous in France. And so we work together for this book. It's just, it will be published. I just received it today from the boxes. So they just sent it me today. And so it will be published the 28th of May in French and in Dutch.
So we are the first ones to see it.
It still
Great.
smells of new book. So it's with big watercolors also.
I see.
And, yeah. And it's about this whale who has the biggest library of the seas in his belly, like this. Yeah, like this.
This is inside.
Yeah.
Wow.
Inside the whale. And this is the postman who becomes friends with the whale. It's called the Whale Library. Yeah.
Interesting. Is it going to be translated into English or German? Maybe?
I don't know. Maybe. I hope so.
Yes, let's hope so.
I don't know. I don't know. It depends a little bit. It depends how successful it is.
So, but this is more for kids or young adults?
No,
or is it really for everyone?
It's for everyone. Look, I mean, there is some naked stuff, so it's not only for kids. Or there is this kind of it's we call it for children from 7 to 99 or something. You know, there is a child being born. It's not specifically for kids or something.
I see.
Yeah. It's a fairy tale. You have to look at it as a fairy tale. It's for everybody. It's a fairy tale about books, how important books are.
I see. So in case... I'm sorry? Go ahead. Sorry, I was interrupting you. Sorry.
No, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, so we have to get it in French or in Dutch in case it's not going to be translated. It's interesting that you pointed out those scenes who show naked people or body functions, because I noticed in your previous books that you are not even shying away from sex scenes between the protagonists, and you're showing them in a, let's say, in a very elegant and tasteful way, if I may say so. What I'm trying to say is, as a reader, I thought they were not exploiting the protagonists at all.
No.
But they were also not showing it in a too fancy, sort of stylish manner, but very normal.
Yeah.
Did you get any reactions on about your sex scenes in your books?
No, not really. No, actually. Maybe because they're so normal. Because that's, you know, I just try to draw it the way it feels, you know, the way it is, you know, it's just, it's not something, I don't, how should I say, I don't draw it when it's not necessary. I draw it when it's necessary for the story. When it's part of the story, I draw it. It's like, I draw cars. I hate drawing cars, but I draw it when it's necessary. I like drawing sex scenes. It's nice to do, but it's not something I focus on or something. I focus more on the emotional inner life of the protagonist. And of course, yeah, when you have a couple and yeah, well, then sex is part of it, I guess.
Mhm.
So, but no, I don't get a lot of remarks on it. But I think it's just, I think it's important in a story to tell and to show what the story needs. For example, in the whale, in the La Baleine Bibliothèque, there was a sex scene and I took it out because I thought it was completely unnecessary. It wasn't necessary. It just was there because the scriptwriter likes writing sex scenes, I guess. But I took it out and I put, it's not that, but and then I put another scene in it where they're naked, running around naked in the bathroom. It's not that and you see the penis like, whoa, okay. That's how it is when you run around naked, you know. It's not that like, so yeah, that's how it works, I think. But
I
I
see.
don't get any remarks on my sex scenes actually.
Hmm. So we're looking forward to this one. What's your next project gonna be? Do you have any fresh ideas yet?
I'm working for Le Louvre in Paris.
Ooh la la.
Ooh la la. So Le Louvre has a series of where they invite comic authors to their museum and they can make a book. They can make the book they want to. It's no, you just get into the Louvre and you do whatever you want to.
Wow.
So they called me in October to ask me if I wanted to make a book in this series. And yeah, well, I said yes.
Of course.
When the Louvre calls, you say, hello, Le Louvre. And then you say yes, of course. Well, I said yes. I'm the first woman in the series.
Ah.
So I'm working on a story based on Cycladic art. It's early Bronze Age culture in the Greek islands. They weren't Greek, but at that time they were something else. And it's a very, very very refined sculptures that looks very, very modern, extremely modern, although they're 5,000 years old. So I was really fascinated. And there is a beautiful collection of them in Le Louvre. And so I decided to work starting from them, from those sculptures.
I see.
So I'm making a book for them.
Yeah, so you probably have to pick a certain aspect because is it this series where David Prudhomme already has drawn a volume and others too? So
this series,
so it has to be much more specific probably than just having a day at the Louvre.
No, I have a real story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically a storyteller. So I'm not. Prudhomme always says I make drawings. I'm not a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a beautiful thing with the Louvre, and he just used his talent as a very powerful visual artist to show people looking at art. It's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have the visual talent of Prudhomme, but I have a talent for storytelling. So I will tell a real story I will tell a story about a boy who is 16 years old and he wants to become an artist in 5,000 years ago. And he will become one of those artists who makes these beautiful sculptures. But when he can choose, he makes more Baroque superhero sculptures, but he's not allowed to because their art is very refined and stylized and hyper. And so he will have to train to change his way of sculpting.
I see.
So that's what I will. Well, that's the story I'm working on right now.
Is there a publication date yet?
September 2022.
All right.
Yeah, it's very
way
specific.
to go.
Yes, a lot of work too. A lot of work. It's very difficult. It's very
All right. Let's hope the Louvre is going to be open again by then.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the interview.
I'm sorry, did you want to say something else?
No.
Because sometimes we have a delay here, I think.
Okay. No.
All right. Thank you very much for your time for the interview. Judith Vanistendael, success with your next projects.
Thank you, well.